Welcome, this is Biodynamics Level 2, Week 11. Before we start the class, I think there's a couple of questions from here. Let me just take a look. All right, okay. So, no worry, Dave. I was telling the guys in the live session that the Q&A this next week doesn't mean that you cannot ask me questions today. I didn't mean that, Dave. No worries. Dave had a question, which is good. He was wondering, how do you know, it's right here, if you want to read it, how to know what size you should do your effect for a live action shot to make it believable? Well, depends on what you're using. First of all, if you're using particles, fluids, and cloth, depends, right? So, and depends also on how flexible the studio where you work is. Some studios, they do everything at live, 1-to-1 scale, and it becomes kind of tricky to scale down for you and effects, and it's a bit heavy. But you should try to work as much as you can. I don't know if you may be following all my recordings, and well, in your case, Dave, you know me for a while. I think we took some courses together. So when it comes to scale, I'm not as picky as other TDs can be. I don't take it as seriously as other guys. But as long as it works for you, try to be as close as you can. If it's a live action show, a big, IMAX film or something, try to stay true, as close as possible, again, to the real scale. But hey, if you're doing if you're doing a waterfall, for example, like Angels Fall, which is that thing is like a kilometer long or something. It's going to be. You have to be very creative if you have to work in real scale. So, as close as you can to real scale. If it's something like cloth, for example, it does help to be close to real scale, because then everything is easier to think of, like the mass of it, properties of the cloth. It can be better. If you're watching the Real Flow training that I do, you can see that we try to stay as close as possible, a bit more strict about it, to the real size of things, or to some sort of realistic scale. Of course, if you want to simulate a dam breaking with rigid bodies and water pouring through, and you want to simulate that at 1,000 scale, making the thing a few centimeters long, it's not going to behave correctly. You can manipulate your forces, and as long as you keep that in mind, okay, that if you scaling down, then you probably need to, you obviously have to adjust your forces accordingly. So increase certain values, decrease others, gravities and things like that. You have to adjust them. But at the end of the day, I find myself grabbing everything in a scene. If I pick up a new scene, a new shot, especially now that I'm more freelancing than anything. They send you a scene file from different studios. Everybody works in a different way. I don't care. I just grab everything, camera, geometry, everything, group it, scale it to a size that is manageable for me, and run it, render it. I don't even have to say anything. As long as to my client, as long as it looks correct, behaves correctly, it's fine. So there is anything set in stone. When you work in bigger studios, they have workflows. And if you go in and try to go around it too much, then it might become a problem. But they will also offer solutions for things like a fluid container that needs 100 million voxels. So they might have something to help you. It's not like you're on your own. So, sorry for being vague in my answer, but it's basically as usual. If it looks good and your computer can do it, by all means, be creative. Try to stay as close as possible to the real size, or at least a scale of 10 or something. Try to, be careful with that one. But there's nothing too strict in there. I hope that helps, Dave. I don't see any other questions, so I'm gonna move on. But you guys know how it is already. So keep typing, and I'll keep checking on you. I don't think we're on too long on this week, because we're almost done with the material anyway. This is the scene that I gave you. I hope you picked it up, and if there are any issues with the scene, please let me know. This thing sometimes is a little buggy when you try to open it. It might crash once, so it's no big deal. It just has to do with the plate in the back and the textures. So if that happens to you, there's no big deal. Just open it up, save it yourself as a different new name, and it should be okay from there forward. So it happens. Also, I moved houses. That's the last week we couldn't do the class, is because I was moving from where I used to live before in the south to the center of Paris, and I must apologize in advance because it's quite loud in here. I didn't know how loud it can get, so I closed all my windows. Everything is closed, and but sometimes you still get noise from the street. So my apologies. Compared to before, when no one walked in front of my house for miles, it was fine. But now it's a bit complicated. So bear with me on that one, and apologies in advance. All right, so I think we're gonna, finish off talking about nCloth. Let me just double check with you dudes here. Okay, you guys are pretty quiet. That's good. So let's wrap this up this week. So I was telling you when I gave you the scene last week, I was saying that there's 3 sets of geometry for every panel, for every cloth, let's say piece of cloth. One that is in quads, okay, like we have here. So everything is as quadratic as possible, let's say, squares. Then you have rectangles, and then you have one that is extruded. And for the class, I'm not going to use the extruded version, and I'm not going to use the rectangles. I just gave you those in case you want to see the difference, and why do we insist as much as possible to keep the geometry that is going to become nCloth with quads and no triangles, no rectangles, nothing funny like that. And this is particularly good because you should practice it and look at the difference, okay, and see what we mean. And so you can speak with property when a modeler gives you a piece of geometry that's supposed to be simulated and it's not right. You can obviously try to adapt and try to make it work and force it, but sometimes there are issues that will come from those simulations just because the topology is not right. So you need to know when it's time to send it back and when it's time, or how far you can push it yourself to make it work. So that's why we gave those things to you there. So there's a few things only to talk about. There left, it was the constraints and the volume tracking option, and just how you will set up something like this. So I'll just go in. We place some test objects in here. Well, test objects are not that important. You do have in the wall a wall reference. This comes, this geometry that we have here, it comes from the camera solving. So if you want to know a little bit more about it, you should watch my level 3 course. I don't know the exact week, but it's somewhere around week 6. Okay, either 1 or 2 behind, or 1 or 2 in the front. Either between weeks 4 and weeks 8, somewhere there. There's 2 classes with Igor, and he covers camera tracking, and he covers camera projections and how to create geometry of a camera solve. Okay, so that's definitely covered on level 3. So this geometry is here as a sample, okay, where the position and the orientation of the geometry should be to match the plate. So if you're looking through, right, so this wall here comes out of that solve. We cannot obviously model the entire set, we'll leave that up to you. But for something like just to hang this piece of cloth here, I don't need much more than just a plane. So you can use this as a reference, right? So you probably go, if you want to be very precise, okay, there's some deformations that you can spend as much time as you want creating that geometry. I think for the class, what I will do is just create myself a little piece of geometry here. So let's have a cube. And let me see where I am, a bit lost. Okay, so I should be there, that's good. Place that in there just to give us something to collide with. You could collide with a plane. I got this, I'm so used to it just to collide with things that have thickness. I think it comes more from a rigid body kind of mentality. Cloth shouldn't matter too much. But if you can, just try to give thickness to your geometry just in case. I'm thinking because in case it passes through, the cloth, Maya will be able to know if it's inside, and it will help you push it out. As opposed to if it's a plane, it might be behind or in the front, and it might just behave weird. All right, so here's my wall. And in this example, this is the only piece of geo you probably need to create. Nothing more after that. So here's the test geometry, or this is my wall. That's my flag. Now I can just go in and place I just need to see where I am. Okay, so we need to orient this guy a little bit and place it. Just, I'm not going to be very precise about this. Okay, and then just try to move this thing a little, not too much. It depends on what you want. If you want to have some draping and folding, probably don't put it touching already. Just let some space for the cloth to move. Okay, so that's fine. Here comes the noise. I don't know if you can catch it on the recording here through my microphone, but there's some sort of concert outside on the street. It just started, which makes everything a lot more fun. So it's not me listening to music while I teach us. It's just some people singing downstairs. Cool. So there you go. So that's the wall. So to do this one first is simple. We just need to make the wall a collision object. So switching back to End Dynamics. Onto the end mesh, we're going to use this guy as a passive collider. That's all. So he gets included into the solve. And we're going to grab our flag. I'm going to use the square version. I believe the other two are hidden. Let me just double check that if it's true. Yeah, the other two are hidden. The square, the extrusion. So this is the one I really want to use. We put these textures in there, not as a plug for the website, of course not. Kind of childish, but it's just to show you the formation of textures and things right on this. You can blame Igor for the design. But there you go. So you grab this piece of geo. Under end mesh, you're going to create an end cloth. Nothing here to worry about. We're going to share the same Nucleo solver and create. The idea here is going to be to try to share the settings. Okay, so this banner is a bit bigger, so he could have his own settings, values for the cloth properties. But things like this flags, for example, I'm going to show you how you can get away very quickly to do all four. So here we go. We have that. We know that the cloth is going to fall. I'm not going to let it fall anyway because there's no point on that. I'm going to right away pin it. And we didn't place anything here to show you where to pin it as opposed to the other flags that do have ropes and things. So here you just do whatever you want. I'm going to you can pin it in the corner. So let's say that someone tied it there. So I'm just going to grab the vertices, some vertices of this. Let's say that corner over there. If you want to see it clearly. I hope you can. There you go. So this four. And I'm also going to pin it on the other side and probably in the middle. Something somewhere, let's say. Cute. Okay. Just somewhere around. Just find my middle. Sorry, my middle. Oh. There I am. I'm going to eyeball it, so I'm going to say somewhere there. Okay, I'm a bit off, but it doesn't matter. Let's just move it a little bit. Okay, that should be all right. I'm off again, but whatever. We can spend hours with this. So with that selected, I'm just going to make because I'm not expecting the wall to move. So where this thing is tied is not going to move. I'm just going to create myself an end constraint of type transform. And that's the cheapest one you can make, right? So it just makes a little locator, which I'm not showing because I'll show you why. The tracking for the camera comes with a whole bunch of locators. There you go, locators. Well, that's not even a locator, sorry. This is a constraint, so dynamic constraint. That's what we need to show. There you go. Locators are hidden, yeah, because the camera comes with a whole bunch of locators. I think they're hidden anyway. So but there you go. So that is my constraint, and it's created right here. And of course, as whenever you move this locator, the pinning is going to be moved. So if you want to fine tune it later to your wall, then by all means you can just move that, and the cloud will simulate and eventually come to rest on top of that wall. To work faster on your end, okay, you shouldn't have to see this plate every time, everywhere. You want to see it only through your camera. So if you select that, actually, I'm going to just do it easier. You're going to look through the camera, select it, go to the attributes, and then I'm going to switch here my environment to be seen only when I'm looking through this camera is a lot nicer, right? So when I go to perspective, I can move quicker, because loading those plates is going to make your scene very slow, and you're going to probably think at first that it's due to your end cloth, and it's not. It's actually, I think it's slower to display the background than to simulate the cloth. So keep that one in mind. And like I was saying last week, we're just going to use a preset to begin and then modify it if necessary. So I'm just going to grab my cloth, go into, here I am. Okay, so all these attributes, we talked about what mattered last week. I'm just going to put a preset. Let's see what we have here. This could probably be a heavy denim, or I don't know, but we'll try a few. It's so easy to put, it doesn't matter. If you put, let's put something a bit more like a t-shirt material, and then we'll see. You can always blend it, like I was saying last week. So you can put, for example, half denim, half silk, I don't know, and have that, behave a bit different. Let's start with this and see what happens. Remember, you have notes in here to kind of help you guide yourself through the simulation, or what you can change. And also, let's put in some wind direction, an overall wind direction, which is good. So I'm going to grab my nucleus. Where is it? There you go. That's my nucleus solver. And I'm going to use, nucleus 1, sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to use then my wind direction. Pick anything you like, doesn't matter. I'm going to use probably -X, so towards the camera a little, and a little bit towards the wall. And the trick, the best part here is just to use some noise on the wind. I'm just going to make it turbulent. You could use regular Maya fields if you wanted, and you can also use fluids to collide with these pieces of geometry. So here we go. Okay, let's run this through. Let's see how this behaves. It is simulating. You can start to kind of see the ripples here. Let me just select that for a second. And you can always go to the texture mode. I mean, the texture will be easier for you sometimes to see if this thing is folding and what it's doing. I'm going to bump up the wind force so we can see it easier. So nucleus 1, grab your wind speed, which is 0. Actually, it wasn't even used. I'm going to put that to 5. This is just due to gravity, then what's happening in there. So put that to 5. And I'm also going to try something here, because look at the speed of simulation. I don't think it should be that slow. Right now we're getting 0.7, 1.1, about 2 frames a second. It seems slow to me for what we have. I'm going to hide the camera, so I'm going to go to show cameras and see if that helps. Okay, 4.1, 2.4, so it speeds up a little bit, 2.5. Even though we're not showing the plate, the tracking plate, it was still kind of, giving a bit of it was slowing things down a little bit. All right, so we're getting about 2.5 frames a second. It's not so bad, okay? We'll see if there's anything we can do to speed it up a little bit. But right now, it seems okay. And then it's a matter of adjusting some settings in here. Let's see what the friction of the piece of geometry. Okay, so we have the collision object in here. It has the bounciness of 0, and it has a friction of 0.1. It depends. Okay, of course, if it's a brick wall against thick leather, something, then you will have to adjust more friction for it. There's no stickiness around here. I don't think there should be any bounciness on this. And this has, of course, the same attributes for collision, meaning like collision thickness. So I can go in, for example, and show the collision thickness of this object. Let's see if it's going to show me. It should be displaying that, and it's not. So let me just try something else here. Weird, there is no one doesn't want to show it. Let me make sure that I'm showing everything. Okay, so there's something that I'm not displaying that is is affecting that. So it could probably be a manipulator or something. Let's see if it's true. Other manipulators. Well, we need to figure out why. Let me just see. nCloud, probably this. Try here. I'm gonna detach it so it's easier. Okay, not that. End rigits. Okay, so it's the end rigits that they were turned off. End rigits are just any mesh, end mesh. So either a passive collider or it wouldn't show up. So that's all. And I believe that is also part of the constraints, but I'm not 100% sure. But there you go. So the collision thickness is the same, right? So you could have it be a bit thicker than your original geometry. So looking at it from the top, okay, you can kind of see where the collision thickness lives, and of course, by increasing this value, just making that wall bigger and bigger. So just want to see 0.5. I don't know the thickness of my actual wall. Okay, so it seems like a value of like 0.1 would be more precise. Given that it's a cube, I don't think it should be any thicker than this, than the actual real geometry. So that's it. So you can just visualize it for a second. And that should do the trick. We probably need to increase the gravity, and that goes for you, Dave, for example, for the scene scale. Even though 9.8 is the correct gravity, it doesn't probably feel too nice at the moment. Let's just let it run for one more. Let's let it run again and see. But I get the feeling that there's not much gravity going on in here. I would like to see a bit more force, especially because it's only pinned to three places here. It would be nice to see more of that. So I'm going to go to the nucleus and change a couple of things in here. So wind speed, I want to try something. I'm going to crank up the wind speed and see what it's actually doing. Okay. You see at the beginning it kind of looks like a turbulence field. You know, it seems like there's noise everywhere. That's just because this wind noise value is a bit too high probably for what we're using. So I'm going to reduce that a little. I just wanted to give a little bit of noise, not too much. You can see that it's still very ripply. But I always advise this to my students. Okay, so crank up the magnitudes first just to make sure that you're pushing this cloud in the right direction and it's actually even that the field is working. So there you go. So this thing is definitely working. If you see the textures, okay, everything is good. And if you render this thing, you'll be fine. Maya software will do it. Let's see, RenderMan, I don't know if it has issues with the texture. Let's see. No, everything's fine, just the aspect ratio. So yeah, the textures are going to be okay. Whatever you map in there, you always have to texture before you turn into nCloud. That's all. And that's meant array because I guess there's some blend shader on it or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's final gather. So I need to turn some settings off. But there we go. So all the engines work. I can kind of see here. No, that's just the photons. I thought it was some interpenetration. It shouldn't be, but no, the spots is actually done through. I don't know. The lighting settings that we have in here are kind of funny. But there you go. So all three engines will render this. So I'm going to adjust my settings of wind a little. You can see that due to the wind force, the cloud is stretching. So it has ability to stretch a little. So keep that one in mind. I'm just going to bring this back. Sorry, I'm a bit lost. Okay, there you go. My nucleus solver, the wind speed, I think I just want a subtle thing. So 5. And I'm going to increase my gravity to probably, I can try 98 to see if 10 times stronger will be a good fit. Don't simulate in texture mode because it's too slow, of course. Alright, so 98 is too strong, but at least it gives me a better idea of the draping. I tend to do these things first. I run it with very strong wind and see how that bends, how it folds. This cloud is not as high resolution as it should be, but you can smooth this out after it's been simulated, which is better. So there you go. So it's going to fold in a certain way. That's why I'm trying to increase my gravity to see if this draping is going to be okay. And now I can just bring that. I think the value of 20 will be more appropriate. Okay, cool. And because it's a nucleus, it's a shear solver, okay? The gravity for all the cloth is going to be the same, and the wind force is going to be consistent for everybody. So ideally, you will let this run. I don't like to use presets. I'm sorry, not presets, initial states. I'm not a big fan of it. You should use pre-roll better, okay? So you should start your simulation before the camera begins to move. Speaking of the camera, let's go look through it. This piece of geo, we can put it on a layer and forget about it. Yeah. So we can just go in. We wouldn't render it even. So I selected, hide that, and go to texture mode. Okay, and you can see play blasted. I don't think it's worth doing it through in the class, right? But you know, we can see that everything is tracking fine. Yep, there's no problem in there. Okay, cool. I'm gonna do it like a broad stroke. So first, I'm gonna put those settings in there. I think it's a T-shirt setting, and then we'll adjust it if necessary. Now for these flags, we're gonna do them slightly different. So instead of running 4 nCloth nodes, these flags are supposed to be of the same size, same thickness, same conditions, same material. Just 4 copies of these guys. What I would suggest you to do is to grab all 4, okay, and combine them. So go to polygons, go to mesh, combine, and I will delete the history as well. So edit, delete by type, history. Okay, so that combine is clear, so you don't have that to worry about it. And I'm going to grab all 4 of them, even though they're not really touching. They can be simulated as one under one nCloth node, but it will be taking, will be considered as 4 different pieces of geometry, which is good. So with this selected, I'm going to go back to my in Dynamics, and mesh. I'm going to create nCloth, and everything is fine. So that way, you know, you have to try to limit the number of nCloth nodes that you have, right? So that's going to make things easier and move faster for you. All right. So this is my new one. If I'm not mistaken, and obviously you can grab this geometry and then find your cloth. This one right here. And I'm gonna put the same preset, the same T-shirt preset. By all means, you can do whatever you want. You can change it, but let's just start with that. That means, in that case, if you're expecting to use the same preset for everything without changing it, then you can, by all, combine everything. You can even combine the big banner as well. There's no problem with that. And now we're going to do some constraints on some of these guys. So let me just try to zoom in here. And let's pin them where they should be. So I'm going to go into vertex. And this is another decision you need to make. If you're not expecting to move these flags at all, I mean at the base of these flags, oops, sorry, I did a wrong selection there, then you could do only one constraint, even for all of them. But if you're expecting, for example, this thing to get knocked over by something and fall, then you have to, of course, separate that constraint. But if there's things that you're going to stay in place like this, I will go in and just do what I'm doing, which is just pin, make one constraint for everybody, and that's it. It's a lot faster, cheaper. But even though, like I said, even though they're one piece of geo, they're simulated as independent. So that this flagpole can fall. If the constraint is on its own, then the thing will fall in the floor and they simulate on one way, where the other 3 will just stay where they are. Which is that is the way. That is one of the good things about nCloth, is you can combine as much as possible, but they will still be considered different faces. All the components are separated. So there you go. Last one. The initial setting is not complicated. Then it gets very tedious. The last 10%, like everything, right? It gets very annoying when you have to try to find a sweet spot, and you start getting notes from your supervisor about it. That's what I start hating nCloth at that point. But for now, it's okay. So I'm gonna make another transform constraint. It should make it in the center of all the selections. That's basically what it does. All right, because the gravity and the wind is shared, then I don't have to touch that. So let's see how this goes. I'm gonna save it just for the hell of it. I don't want to lose this. Okay, so now we're simulating everything at once. I can see that the other pieces of geometry are here. So yeah, so let me just find this first on the outliner. I just want to hide the rectangular thing, and so fly rectangle, square. We can hide this. Okay, hide that. We just do this quickly here, and I'll come and check on the classroom in a second. So if you have any questions so far, you can start typing them now. And just quickly do this. This one's fine, and this one right there. All right, cool. So everything is simulating simultaneously. I'm gonna let it run for a few frames, and come and see if you guys have any comments. So any questions, anybody so far? All right. Okay, cool. Let's keep moving then. Well, okay, so that's good. I forgot to, well, I didn't forget, we didn't get to that point yet. I did pin them to the flagpole, but I didn't turn the flagpoles into collision objects, so that is the next step. So, same thing, okay? I would prefer to combine, if I'm not going to move them, again, I'm going to combine just these guys into one piece of geometry. So, polygon mesh combine. Delete the history just because there's no really need to track that. If you wanted to separate them with a poly separator, it will still work. So there's no need to track any history of combining those things together. So now there's just one piece of geometry. You can just go into and mesh, passive collider, done. All the passive colliders could be easily combined together. I could have combined that wall. I should have combined that wall with these flagpoles here. You know, why not? But because I don't think it'll be but I guess the friction of the wall will be higher than the friction of the flagpole, because these guys are made of aluminum or something. But yeah, aside of that, I don't see much difference. If you wanted to test one or the other, you know, if you don't want to simulate all the pieces of cloud at once, or you want to split it into multiple machines in a render farm or something, then it's simply just select your cloud and disable and save 2 or 3 scenes and launch them. There's nothing more than that, to be honest. I will probably put them all in one scene and then split them like that. So that one is set up. Let's go ahead and set this last one. Okay, so grab this. Let me just find that on my the outliner. My sign, and I'm gonna grab this. I grab the extrusion. So I'm gonna grab the rectangle and the other one and hide it. Show the square. With the extrusion, what you could do, if you wanted to use something with a thickness, you will just use the the end cloth piece of geometry as a wrap deformer. So you will wrap deform the extrusion, the extruded banner, to the thin banner, and then you will get the deformation. It's the cheapest way to go, to be honest, as opposed to simulating something with thickness, which is I think is unnecessary. In a case like a banner, okay, we're going to talk about the balloons now next. This guy, same idea. So go to, well, first I'm going to grab this. I don't think these flagpoles will collide with this, so I'm not going to make them collide. I don't think so. The wind is going to do that, any of that. If you want to simulate this cables, okay, you will have to think if you want to, how you want to do it, because first of all, there's not much detail in here, so you will have to add more details so this thing deforms. If it's just meant to be a piece of wire and it's going to hold on like this, then you don't have to probably even turn it into end cloth. Try to avoid those kind of things. If the camera is like ours, right? So I think our camera It's quite far from it, and I don't know how close it will get. I think this will break my seat, but let's try. Right, so this is as close as it gets. Make your decision. If you really see the deformation in here, then do something about it. But I don't think we will. I think we will just see the banner moving. You could deform this cheaper by just with a joint or something. But it's up to you. But if you want to see folding, and then we have to turn that into end cloth, and it will probably have to be a separate piece of geometry. And then you're gonna have to constrain it to this. Okay, so try to start simple and complicate your life as necessary. But if you wanted to go that way, you will grab all four, combine them, and then turn them into end cloth. For the sake of this example, I will, because I want to show you different constraints. So I'm just going to grab them, combine them. These are NURBS. Okay. It only works with polygons, so you have to convert this thing to polygons first. These are NURBS? Oh yeah, horrible. I'm surprised because I didn't do this. It was prepared by Igor for us. So there you go. We're gonna grab them. Okay, and then modify, convert NURBS to polygons. I don't know what it's gonna give me. It's funky usually. And I'm going to hide the NURBS. Okay, and this is a bit funky. Let's see what I have here. Somehow I guess I have something else selected when we combine the thing, because there's like two knots in here. Okay, just grab that. Doesn't let me select the other one, so I don't know what that is, but it doesn't matter. I should be able to grab from here. Okay, now that I have this guy selected, it's like it's happening on all of them. I don't know if did I hide the NURBS? Sorry, NURBS surfaces. There you go. Cool, so let's grab all four. Combine, edit, delete by type history. And I'm going to make these guys then end cloth, so I'll go to mesh, and we're going to have to select a preset, of course, that is more appropriate. So I'll go to end mesh, create end cloth. That's what I'm not combining that with the banner, right? And then let's put a preset in here. I don't know. Let's see what we have. There's a rubber sheet, solid rubber, t-shirt, water balloon. Well, you guys pick whatever you think is best for you. I think a plastic shell. I think I'm gonna use either the putty one or the rubber sheet. This is just an indication. I'm just thinking what the rubber sheet will do. They will try to come back to his original shape. If bent, probably. I'm thinking this is more like a wire than a rope. If it was a rope, there is no preset for rope, but then you can probably. I think it's best to start with a preset and then modify it. But I'm gonna try to use. I like rubber sheet or plastic sheet. I'm not sure. I'm gonna use the rubber one for now. Hit replace, and there we go. And I'm gonna grab my banner and also make it end cloth. So create end cloth, and I'm gonna put the same preset of the t-shirt as the others. Perfect. And to pin these guys together, okay, there are going to be quite a few constraints. So I'm going to make, because there's not much detail in here, and by the way, because we had to convert this to polygons, it got triangulated, so, that's kind of what we were talking about at the beginning. So this is going to deform weird. If it's too weird, then you're going to have to redo this tube yourself. And figure some other solution as far as the topology goes. I don't think it's necessary to even simulate it, but I did it just to show you the settings. So I need to pin this rope to this banner, so I can just grab. This is just for kicks, okay? I don't want to use this as the place to pin it. So I'm going to use that to hide the pin or something, but I'm going to actually grab this too. So I'm going to select my vertices, see if one is enough. Probably you will need to grab a few more, and this is a bit low res, like I said, so if you want to go for something very detailed, you will have to put more CVs. I'm going to grab the first one, and I'm going to grab, you could grab some CVs, some vertices of this guy. Let's see how that behaves. So let me just grab everything. Okay, so 1 second, so let me select it. You can see the how close we're working, you know, how much we have to zoom in to be able to get to this point. So this means that this kind of detail won't be seen for sure. You can be able to grab the CVs of the two for some reason. Okay, so now it should be okay. It's very, very uncomfortable to move in around here. Okay, so that's better. Doesn't matter the order because I'm just going to pin component to component. So if I grab my vertices again, hopefully this time it works. Shift select vertices of this guy. Grab it. Okay, everything's selected. And then the constraint is going to be you can do component to component. Those are components from two different pieces of cloth. This could be a bit more expensive, but it works. If you go to the options, there's nothing. Okay, so no need to worry about. And there we go. Let's try to find it. So dynamic constraint, and let's try to show this one. I don't know why it's not displaying. Dynamic constraint shape 3. Well, we'll double check if this constraint is the correct one. It should be because it's not. It's just not visible for some reason. But that's the one you will use to pin two pieces of cloth together, component to component. Probably I could have done it all at the same time, but it's just it's gonna. Let me see if I can do it quickly. Grab this guy. I'm gonna get rid of it and do that all at once. So back again, vertices. The problem is if I do them all together, because it's pinning component to component, it's gonna also pin between itself. So it's gonna try to pin things from this cable to the cable at the bottom. So I'm going to also show you how you can get away with it. I think there's a value that you can change. So select them, select that, and then let's do the other side. Okay. Also, another way while I do this boring selection thing, I don't like to do these things in class because it's so annoying, you could, for example, combine the cable. If it's something not so close, like our shot actually, you can combine the cables with the piece of geometry of the banner and then just paint different properties of it. So even though it's one cloth node, there's no need for constraints. And then you can just go in and paint the properties of the cable. So you can paint, for example, bend resistance or, you know, there's something called rigidity. Sorry, you can paint that attribute and then make these cables or these faces of that combination of both behave differently. That's another way. I've chosen this longer path just to show you more stuff, of course. Okay, so everything is selected. Let's try that. See how it goes. Okay, so that should be the constraint. We'll double check if that's working fine. Then the constraint itself, this constraint, we can analyze it a bit more. I should be able to see the components constraint in here. That's the part that is worrying me a little, because with the others, you can see them highlighted in green. Dynamic constraint 1, so let me just show you. So that's the one for that banner, the green one. Constraint 2 is constraining those, and constraint 3, this one is the one taking care of this banner, and I don't see much. So we're gonna keep an eye and see why that's happening. They should be lighting up in green. Now, on the constraint themselves, you have different ways, different types of behaviors. You can see you can have a springy one, so it's like but I'm not sure the difference between spring and rubber band is they seem to be similar, but I guess the spring might have a damping attribute, but they seem to be a bit redundant having the spring and the rubber band. or you can weld it together so they wouldn't stretch. That's the point of those, right? They wouldn't have any give. It's just, you know, welded together. Those points are not going to move. They're not going to separate. And then you also have in here, we're displaying the nearest pairs, or let's see if this changes the order of the display. Because what I like to do is the connection method, because what I was saying before, if you do what I did, that I selected CVs from both pieces of cloth around, the default behavior was the component order, so it will just constrain things in the order you selected them. But I've seen before that it creates extra connections of things that shouldn't be connected. You can do it based on the max distance, within max distance. So you can specify a distance where those points have to be within each other, and that's where the constraint is gonna happen. Try that and see if it works. Okay. If you go too high, then you start basically grabbing more points around. So, you know, we'll try this one as well. And then every constraint, okay, has a strength and a glue strength. The strength of it, if you have seen I keep referring to soft bodies because that's the most, you know, the closest you can get to end cloth. And you make a spring, right? The stiffness of the spring is what keeps those points together of a soft body. The strength of this constraint is how much is going to, if it's, for example, like a rubber band, how strong that rubber band is going to be. And then you have something called the glue strength, and the glue strength is different. It's just how strong it is at the connection point. So if you play with the glue strength, you can basically break a constraint at any point you want. So you can keyframe the value. And let's say that there's a storm or something in this scene, right? And you want to have this banner to hold for a while, and then at some point it's so strong that this connection, these links cannot hold anymore. That will be the glue strength. So you know, it's the amount of force applied on the connection point. You know, if it's above this value, it would just the constraint would just break and let go. So you can keep that as well. You can use that. Let's test this thing. I don't know. One thing I haven't done is constrain the rope to something. So sadly, we're gonna have to do it. So you're gonna have to see me select a few things again. So this one, I'm not gonna care too much of what I'm selecting. So let's just grab it there. I don't know if you agree with me, but isn't a cloth boring as hell? I just can't stand it. I prefer to do other things, explosions and more fun stuff. But it's necessary sometimes, you know. And there's a lot of work for character TDs. They're hard to find. So those of you who want to make the jump and brave enough to do it, then please. I think there's a lot of need for those positions. I'm going to use a transform because I'm not going to move those bolts. Okay, so there we go. We have a bunch of constraints and we have a bunch of end cloth pieces and all. I'm going to hit play and let it run for a few frames just to see what happens, see if we catch any problems. But I wouldn't simulate the whole thing. I'll leave that up to you. Let's just see what it does. It'll be slow because it takes, you know, it's a lot of information going on in there. The only part that worries me is the big banner there. I want to see what's happening in there. So I'm going to pause this for a sec. Okay, but check something out here. At least it's working. Okay, so you can see the constraints now, they're showing up. Before they weren't showing up. I guess they start to show up when you start simulating the cloth. For what I can see, I guess I created the cloth and created a constraint and never hit play. So that cloth wasn't almost registered in the solver. Once it is registered, you can see the links happening. Okay, so these links are working. We need to adjust the properties of this to a different material that doesn't have any GIF. Right now, it's just stretching, but it's okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with that for now. For what we're doing in this class, there's no biggie here. So I'm gonna let it run. Let me check on you. Anything? Any questions or something? I don't see any questions, so I don't think you have anything to ask me right now. I can see it because it's pretty straightforward. There's no magic here. All right, so this thing is working. I will invite you to play Blast It with more time. I just want to talk about one last thing before we finish it. So there you go. Here's your textures. Okay, the wind is blowing fine. You can see this banner is being affected by the wind force, by the gravity. If you wanted to modify settings, for example, let's say that you don't want so much gravity on this guy, you want to use something different. You know that under dynamics, somewhere here. Sorry, it's up here. Let me just close a few things. There you go. So under the dynamic properties over here, you have the ignore solver gravity. So you can just disconnect that one and the wind itself, and then add another gravity field just for that piece of cloth. So nothing, nothing to worry there. The textures here went away because I combined them, so you will have to reapply the textures on these guys, okay? Or simulate them and then separate that, and whatever you want. But that's why the textures are not here. And even though I think it's just because the shader is not applied to that, but no, you can fix that yourself. It's not a problem. All right, so there you go. So everything is simulating. Let's talk last about the balloons that we have here. To see it easier, I'm going to disable the cloth and all the other guys. So I'm going to grab these guys and just disable them. You should disable the constraints as well, but I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Let me just see if that's true. See, this thing is a bit slow. It's just because of the camera. Let me just hide that, and that should be... Yeah, it's much faster. Okay, so just that camera, even though it's not visible, it still try to load those pictures. Bit evil. All right, cool. So I'm going to grab one of those balloons, and we're going to talk about it. So Enclub has a pretty cool feature called the volume tracking module. So I'm going to grab this and make it Enclub like anything. And if you scroll down at the bottom, we kind of skip over when I was talking about the Enclub for the first time. Under pressure, then you can do a volume tracking module, which is basically it's gonna calculate the volume of this, and it's gonna try to preserve it. Okay, but you can manipulate it as you wish by making this balloon lose pressure or gain more pressure, and combine this with a type of constraint that I'm going to show you, and have those balloons and those pieces of geometry that are close just break. Okay, so it's quite interesting how the way this behaves. There are a couple of presets that will take care of this, the initial values for you. So if you grab a preset, for example, for the airbag, the beach ball, or the water balloons, water balloon and water volume, these guys already have that turned on. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to say this is an airbag. Oh, it's more like a beach ball. Let's say a beach ball. So let's replace it. You can see that this definitely got turned on. I had it on already on the other one, but it got turns on. Okay, so the volume tracking module gets turned on, and you can see that we're not really pumping anything. So basically, the way this works is I can pump in pressure, or I can have it even loose pressure inside. Okay, if you leave it balanced at 0 and 0, okay, so the pressure damping is 0, the pump rate is 0. Basically, this balloon is going to try to maintain its shape. So let's see. I'm going to make myself a bit of a ground plane. I could try to use Maya's Enclub ground plane. Let me just see. Yeah, that works. I can use the ground plane from Maya because it's below this balloon, so the balloon is going to fall. So I'm going to go to the nucleus solver and then turn on the use plane. And let's keep an eye on this guy then. So let's simulate just this one. There we go. We'll take a look and see what happens. But what I just want to show you is what it does. Okay, so this thing is affected by the forces as well. So I will probably turn off the wind force. So I can ignore the solver wind, keep the gravity that we're using. So it doesn't go away from the screen. I want to stay where he is. But you can see that when it starts, it inflates automatically. I think it's because the start pressure, okay, is set to 2, so the pressure at the beginning is double what it should be. I could be wrong, but let me just double check that one here. No, so that's another one. I could have would have thought that it said. Also, it could be that some of the settings in here are changing. There's so many things. Let me see if there's anything to do with the input mesh attract is turned off. That's fine. Incompressibility of 10 and seal holes. Well, I'm gonna take a look at this in a minute. Before I forget, there's this option of sealing the holes. Okay, so if your geometry is open, or if when you model you didn't close it completely, if you don't check this option in here, any holes in the geometry is gonna lead into this balloon to lose. I think my Adobe Connect just restarted. Is everything okay with the class? I think my Adobe Connect just had a problem. I just saw it jump. Sorry guys, in the live session here, did I lose the connection or something? Because my Adobe Connect just restarted itself on its own. These guys don't even hear me. Alright, sorry. Okay, now you can hear me. My Adobe Connect just did something weird and disconnected itself and kind of restarted. Did you guys lose me for a long time and I didn't know? Sorry, I'm gonna pause the recording because I don't know what's happening here. 1 second, I'll be right back. I don't know what's happening. Okay, so we're back. I think we just a little hiccup on my Adobe Connect for some reason. So I was talking about this balloon. I'm just gonna recap quickly. Well, that's fine. Let's recap with the recording, no problem. So I was talking about the volume tracking model. I applied the preset for the beach ball, all right, which has a bunch of settings turned on, including the volume tracking. So it's going to try to preserve the volume that I have here. Last, when I realized about the crash of my Connect, I was talking about this option for sealing holes on the geometry. And I was saying that if when you model your geo, is open on an end, it has some sort of holes or something, and you uncheck this option, basically the air inside this balloon is going to escape through that hole. So sometimes, because you might not have a geometry that is perfectly closed. It happens. If you turn this on, Maya will just do it for you. We'll just create a shell around it and guarantee that there's no holes for the air to pop out. So that's right. I'm still dealing with the fact that this balloon inflates itself at the beginning. But I'm gonna keep an eye. Let's run it again and see what happens. All right, so I need to figure out why this is going on. It shouldn't be doing that, but at least just pause it, frame it. Now you will see it collide, okay, and you will see that even though it's inflated quite a bit, I think my wind is still affecting this balloon. This is a bit off. There's like some sort of the wind force is still affecting it for some reason. Well, let's keep an eye on it. When he collides, you can see that it's not really losing the shape. I just don't like the fact that the wind is still affecting this. Uncomfortable. Let me just try ignore this and do it again. Weird, but well, I'll change the preset and see if that does it, because definitely the wind is not affecting, it's just the gravity, but it's still kind of going forward. Let me just do something. Just grab that and apply. Let's do the water balloon, is more noticeable. Okay, so let's try this one. 1 second. Something in my computer is acting funny. What is this? Sorry, apologies for that. I don't know, something happening here that is killing my computer. I don't know what it is. Okay, let me check and see if the Connect didn't crash again. I don't know what's going on today. Okay, you guys can hear me. You can see me, right? Just a quick thumbs up if you don't mind, just so I don't lose you again. Dave, can you tell me everything is okay? All right, thank you. Sorry for checking every 5 minutes. I just don't know what's happening, and like my machine is locked up. You know, I'm gonna reopen this scene. Something, I don't know what happened there. I'm just gonna have to kill Maya altogether because I think it's worse than I thought. So let's start over. But I'm just gonna do the balloon. I think I saved the scene before anyway. And just to keep it simple, you know what? I'm gonna just do something. I'm just gonna create myself a sphere, just because we're running out of time in the class, and I still want to show you this. I'm gonna make a sphere, put it over here. I'm going to create. Just picture that as a balloon. Make this thing encloth. Alright, so on the nucleus solver I'm going to turn on, I'm going to increase the gravity a little bit. Let's do that to 20, and I'm going to use the ground plane as a collision. And here I'm going to apply the preset of the water balloon just to, there you go. So, alright, cool. So that should be good. And then let's just open the pressure tab, and that's what I was trying to talk to you guys about. So that should do the trick. Alright, run this. Much better. Okay, cool. It's just the other scene is fine. You can still do it there, but it just has too many variables to deal with, and I don't have enough time. Meaning like the camera plate and the other pieces of enclosure are there, you know, so it can get annoying. So here we go. So this is basically showing what I'm trying to say. So it's tracking the volume. Okay, you can see that this thing is not deflating. It's not changing. You can see that the air definitely is, you know, trying to find its way inside. Okay, so it's not a soft body, for example, that cannot do that, right? It will just get squished in one end and that's it. There's no really awareness of the air inside. You can pump air. Okay, if I put the pump rate to 1, for example, this balloon is going to start to inflate. Right? So you can see, and it keeps pumping. So it's like I'm plugging in a pump or air source, okay, and it will go on as long as as much as I want to. This is not going to explode on its own unless you do something like this. So let's say that you want to reach a point where this cannot hold anymore and it's just going to break. You can do it by selecting some of the vertices. Okay, let's say you want the tear to happen here in the middle. That's the only thing. You have to specify where you want this thing to tear. And then there is one type of constraint. If you go to constraint, there is something called a tearable surface. Sorry, I said terrible surface. It's a tearable surface. Nothing in there. Okay, so you just create it. And this one is based on the selection. I don't know if we see it here. Let me just... well, we'll see it probably when I rewind the link. But this constraint, it has the same controls, okay? So you can do the same thing. It's just set to well by default. Everything is constrained to each other, all the selections, all those 2 CVs. And then you play with the strength of this constraint. I'm just going to leave it at the default value, okay? And then we'll see. So this balloon, remember, is going to hit the ground. I have the pump rate already turned on, so we need to see. This balloon is going to be inflating before it even hits the ground, so I'm going to take the pump rate, put it to 0. But what's going to happen is if the pressure inside that balloon becomes too strong and it's higher, the threshold is higher than the strength of the constraint, this is just going to break. And it could break even falling in the air, or you can just break on collision. We'll see. We just have to adjust the value of the constraint. And keep an eye on the geometry somewhere here. We're going to see at some point a tear. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so far it's holding. I don't know, it's going to roll. Probably put the cut. I can see here that it broke already, I think. Okay, so my constraint is somewhere here. Let's just take a look and see. It hasn't broken. Okay, so that's fine. It's holding up. Let's go in and pump some air. And eventually, let's just keep an eye on this. The only thing, I don't see the links of the constraint activated, so I don't know if this if it got made correctly. I'm gonna make another one just for the hell of it. Okay, so I'm gonna grab some vertices in here again. You could select, but I should mention this. You could select the whole piece of geometry, and then go and use the terrible surface thing. What's gonna happen in that case is the entire surface is ready to be broken. It can break at any point, and that's fine. But if it's a piece of geometry like this one, it's not a problem. If you have a lot of detail, it's gonna be a pain in the ass. It's gonna take forever to simulate. So it's recommended to just use a selection of vertices as opposed to the whole thing. So I'm gonna grab those two and make another one. So okay, so the constraint is definitely made. So let's keep an eye in here and see if it's just, let's go. That's it. Sometimes it's just it's very hard to break them. Sometimes you just break in midair. They're a bit temperamental. But this thing, at some point, even if you hit it with something, so just to force it, I'm going to make end particles. I'm going to make an emitter. So, and I think it's a good idea anyway, just to finish the class with this. And I can show you that because it's a part of the nucleus solver, everything just kind of works. So here is my end particle emitter. I'm going to turn this guy on. Actually, I need to rewind and play this back. And probably reduce the amount of particles. Something like 10. So everything is connected. I'm just dumping some particles to show you that they can collect, they can collide with themselves, and they will also, if we adjust the forces now, they can contribute to breaking those links that we have here. So you can see that they're interacting, they're pushing each other, okay? It's just that the mass of my particles is not strong enough, so it's just bouncing off. But you can see that they definitely, at least they're bouncing off this, and if I grab my end particles and increase the mass, okay, so dynamic properties, mass, okay, let's say a mass of 10, then we'll start seeing, let's see, just the pressure inside that balloon is very high. Okay, so I'm starting to see a little bit. Let me just rewind it, try it again. You can kind of see it, but it's not strong enough, so let's keep cranking this up. 30. I mean, if a balloon, you have to think about it. If the balloon is so filled with air, it's so tight in there, you're gonna have to drop almost like bowling balls or something to be able to see the effect, right? But you can see it now a bit better, okay? And because I want to really break this thing and it's not breaking, I'm gonna go in and just do 120. See what this does. Let me look for it. When it breaks, it's definitely, you can just see the geometry get separated and a hole just appeared, right? Let's go in and grab the constraint and lower the strength of it. So there are two of them, there's two cuts. Like I said, what worries me is that I don't see them light up in green like they should be, so we'll see now. Then you have a value of the strength, so I'm going to reduce that strength from 20 to 2, just to really force it and see if it's going to make them break. No. Let's keep reducing that value. Okay, so put that to 0.1. This thing sometimes, like I said, it's I don't know, they find it a bit buggy. Sometimes it just breaks on its own. It's so hard to keep them together, and sometimes they just don't break. And I will stop pumping air in it and see if that helps me as well. Just to be able to show you how these things look when they break. So grab that. And the pump rate, put that to 0. I'm going to try something, turning off also the seal holes problem and see. So that should definitely work. Okay, there you go. I had to like my eagle eye working here, so there you go. There you go. That's an interpenetration. It looked like a hole in here. I still don't see it breaking. Well, that's one of those things. Let me just keep playing it. That's just interpenetrations because this thing has the self-collide turned off, probably the balloon. So collisions, no, self-collide is on, it's just not doing it. Well, I'm gonna have to try, probably, we'll try that on the Q&A next week. I'll prepare something a bit better, but this will definitely break. At some point it will break. And if you turn off the seal holes like I did, it will just lose air. In a case like this, when there's no air being pumped in and there's been hit by particles over and over again, eventually it will just flatten out like a pancake. There's nothing in there. The way to control this, the strength of it is just using the strength in here. You can probably reduce all the values in all the constraints. Let's see if this one breaks. One last try before I go. Okay, well, this doesn't really want to do it. Like I said, I think the problem that I'm having is that this constraint didn't get made. Something, my computer, the last few minutes have been acting a bit weird. I'll probably redo this and it will be fine. You will see definitely green lines showing you where the constraint actually is. One last try. I'm going to make the whole, because it's not that much detail, I'm going to make the whole thing terrible. So there you go. That's what should happen. Okay, so now this is working. I don't know why the other one didn't like it. Maybe because I selected only 2 vertices instead of 3. Maybe you need a minimum of 3. I don't know. But this case, this is gonna break probably right away. Let's see. But you can see it's a lot slower. Once you hit it, there we go. Too much, but well, you kind of get the idea. So it just the faces get separated, and they behave like Encloth. On their own, as every face individually can separate and break. And in this case, it exploded completely. All the air got out. But if you have a little hole, then and you keep hitting it with something, and you don't pump any air, and you uncheck the seal holes, the piece of geometry is going to deflate completely. And then you can keyframe the pump rate and re-inflate it. Or if you have like a hot air balloon, for example, a real simulation of it, you can easily have it. You can have a balloon with a hole in the bottom, and then you can keep pumping your air, and then also let the air out. Don't seal the holes. And then if you pump enough air, the thing will lift, and if you just turn it off, it will just fall. It will behave like you would expect in real life. So with that, I think any questions about these things, guys? Before I go to my next class, which I'm late for it, by the way. Let's see what you guys say. No questions. There is an Ingyan. Can you give me a thumbs up if you have any questions or not? I don't know if there's lag or what it is, but all right. Well, I take Dave's opinion as if there's any questions, that's what we're here next week. So I'll see you guys then. I gotta run to my next class. So stop sharing this. If you're watching this, thank you. One more class to go next week. See you soon.